So, Tony Adams, very lovely to have you on my podcast.
Great to be here.
And I must say, you're looking very snazzy with your yellow coat, your green suit. Very elegant.
Thank you very much. Yes, self-esteem. I've got a bit about that, you know. I like to look after myself, and it's my probably one weakness. I've got a lot of suits.
Have you?
Yeah. I have, yeah.
Well, I mean, large ego and low self-esteem is
absolutely
a factor of addiction, but that isn't you, is it? Because your self-esteem...
Well, you said no, I'm egotistical here because I wear a nice suit and a lovely yellow coat. No, I like myself today. It's been a long journey. And I like myself today, and I like dressing up and looking good. And I like to think it's self-esteem and not ego.
I think it is.
Yeah, thank you.
So the question I always ask people who join me on this podcast is, what is a particular challenge you have faced or are facing?
I thought he was going to say, why are you here? So I ain't got a clue. Challenges, my God, I've had loads. And a lot of it's self-making and self-destruction, a little bit of a button inside of me.
When I was researching you, your grandfather was an addict, an alcoholic. He was violent. So I guess some of that button is epigenetic, that it's inherited.
The DNA, I'm not a scientist here, and I'm not a doctor, but the DNA, they reckon it's about 40% DNA, the illness of addiction. So, and there's a bit of learn and nature and nurture. Yeah, and I think I've had a few experiences in my youth that weren't particularly great, and our family, we didn't talk. There was no emotional maturity whatsoever, and I'm not having a go at them, as it were. It was just the way that they experienced life and the learnings that they had. And I'd like to think that I've put a stop to that. I put a little circuit breaker in here and actually started to grow up, because boy, I needed to.
You've changed the pattern in your family. So what was the pattern? So people who don't know your story, though you are very well known.
Well, as a child, full of fear, basically. Fear has been, very lonely, desperately sad young child, but couldn't articulate that and couldn't speak, panic attacks at school. And I always say, when the book was going round in a reading lesson and I'm sitting there, my heart's going so fast and I'm like, oh my God. And it come to me, and because I'm in such a state, I do it wrong, and I said wheelie instead of really, and everyone laughed at me. So
the humiliation.
Yeah, the humiliation of that, the shame, and so sensitive in that environment. But there was another side of Tony that run away from all that stuff. So I just run to the football pitch. And that's what I did, because it calmed the head down, and I was good at it. So I was getting pats on the back for what I was doing and not who I was. So all the time the ego was going up, and all the time the self-respect and self-dignity and everything, really my emotions, were being suppressed and going down. So it was a tough journey, which my escape, worst attendance on my school, I'm not proud of that, but I just wasn't comfortable in my own skin. Hallelujah. I've just maybe got there today, but it's been a long journey. But that's the child that was lonely, sad and scared, frightened to death, and we couldn't sit around the dining room table in the evening and say, Dad, I had a panic attack at school. He had his own journey. He was on the docks when he was 12. He's had his own. He's had an alcoholic father, come home from the pub, and on a Sunday lunchtime, if you spoke, the keys would be in your face. It's a horrific childhood that he's had. So he's got his stuff, and my mum's got her stuff. And what I've done for the last 28 years is kind of cleaned up my stuff.
Cleaned your side of the street.
Clean, yes.
Do you know, and you look back at your 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 12-year-old self, what were you frightened of?
Oh, wow, what a good question. I think of life, of death, not being here existentially. We're getting a bit deep now, but young little boys probably don't know about that stuff. But I wish I could, when I went to the school gates, 5 years old, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it, and I cried, and my mum took me home. Instead of saying, look, son, you go in there, you'll be all right after a while, go on, away you go and have your cry, go and it's all right, go to school. And that was a pattern I repeated, through my life. Anything that I was no good at, or didn't like, or didn't want to face,
you flew.
I'd run away. And I'd run away to the football pitch. So that was my, in effect, escape, but it actually suppressed my thoughts and my feelings as well, and it stopped me growing. And I got into Arsenal Football Club, played for the first team at 17 all the time. I don't know, my passport's gone, it's with the club, I don't have to book up a ticket for holidays and don't have to pretty much brush my teeth.
It's like being in the army almost. You're in a place of belonging, aren't you?
100%.
But I was thinking of that 17-year-old boy and in some ways a split that established young from 5-year-old kind of escaping from school or wanting to run to the pitch is that a real split internally about where you had agency, where you had skill, where you were valued, which was on the football pitch. But your relationship with yourself of who I am I lovable, am I going to be left, and am I going to die? Those kind of profound questions remained locked inside, but also when they're locked inside, they multiply. They get bigger.
That was my experience.
But what was interesting was that, because often if you look at young people, if you find one thing that they're good at, that can build their all-around self-esteem. Because you can find your talent, if you're good at acting, if you're good at football, if you're good at something, it can kind of filter down to all aspects. But it felt like there was this wall inside you.
I'm not sure whether I'm wired up differently. I've shown a lot of footballers, David Beckham comes to mind, to be honest with you. Bex is emotionally mature, emotionally intelligent. And when he got us knocked out of the Argentina World Cup, he cried. I didn't cry at all for anything. I'd toughen up and kind of get on with it. What are you doing crying? So he was there with his mum and dad. I always remember afterwards, and they were like tears, floods of tears. He took the world on his shoulders. He'd made this amazing mistake, and it's like, wow, perfect night. So full of admiration.
Express what he felt.
So full of admiration. So when I see my therapist, who's just passed away, so I'm a bit emotional today. Yeah, Saturday night he went, James W., who saved thousands of addicts and got them onto he had the magic. He knew you send an addict to save an addict, and the guy had the sprinkle of stardust, and he knew if you were, excuse my language, I don't know if we can swear, but the bullshit around stuff, and you're not ready, mate, away you go, come back when you're ready. And I went to see him, and I didn't know he was going to be gold, but he was, and I sat down with him and I went...
When you were how old?
29, and I didn't want to be on the planet. I was that much in pain.
Is that your rock bottom?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It was after prison, after the car
Well, 6
crash.
years after prison, so that's why I'm a bit
It took you a while, you were a tough bugger, weren't you?
Well, I think getting a lot of success. There's a lot of success on the football pitch, Although I do say we didn't win the league again at Arsenal until I sobered up, because I got very good at cup competitions when I could get up for 20 games a season, but actually Saturday, Wednesday, there was no way. The amount that I was consuming, there's no way I could do that. And the club, we won a couple of cup competitions, League Cup, FA Cup, European Cup Winners' Cup, but I didn't until, like I say, I sobered up, that we actually won the league again in 98 because they had their captain back. So I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, I think it's so interesting how the two operating paths could operate in you side by side. Your kind of skill as a leader at 20, as captain of Arsenal at 20, which I also want to ask you about, which is quite interesting, being captain when you're a shambles internally, if you know what I mean.
Well, I was different until I sobered up and I've not really got to my bottom, but I was a bully. I was bullied at school. I remember the kids lining up on the coach, and I was at the front of the coach, and one by one come forward and hit me on the head.
Oh my God!
Like that.
Oh.
So they were 2 years older than me, and I went on an away day with them, and the shame and the pain of that, I never spoke about that until I got in recovery. None of this stuff I spoke about until I started working with that James W. and stuff, and started to open up, because, like I say, I knew how to play football and I knew how to get drunk, but I didn't know who I was. That's the first thing I said to him. So then, once I got to the fifth year in school, all of a sudden I'm the bully, I'm the one that's top of the tree, and kind of, I'm this good footballer playing for England, where here we go, all of a sudden you're bullying other kids. And it took me into the Arsenal Football Club, where they made me captain and I could order people around, and it seemed to be working. I was like, wow, they were calling it drive and determination. I was going, you get here, do that and do that and do this way, and you come in here. I wasn't interested in your relationships and who you were with or your parents, and you need to do your job today, son. So of course that got a lot of success. Won league in 89 and 91 and all these cups.
Yeah. But
all the time that kind of internally and off the pitch was crumbling, absolutely crumbling, almost. And the things started to add up. The prison in 1990.
That was for a car, wasn't it?
Yeah,
crash. I
can tell you a few stories, but I was 4 times over the legal limit. I went straight across an A road doing 80 miles an hour. Could have killed everybody.
Alive,
Sunday
Tony
afternoon.
Adams.
I know. It's weird. This is really weird. Is it odd or is it God? I don't know. But I passed my test in 1983, and I never put my seatbelt on. I never put it on. It was before those days. My dad was a lorry driver. He never put his seatbelt on. It was a kind of, if you were cool, it's madness.
Why would you be an idiot?
Why would you put the belt on? So on that Saturday afternoon, 4 times over the legal limit, in my Sierra Cosworth, going across that A road, I put my seatbelt on. I had flip-flops. 7 years I'd been driving and never put my seatbelt on. That Sunday afternoon. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is, but it saved my life. I still headbutted this window screen and put it through. And rightly so. Although I say this, I'm a patron at Forward Trust, and they work with 12-step programs. There was no 12-step program in Chelmsford Prison when I went in there, and that's why I'm a bit advocate of putting it into prisons across the country.
Yeah, there's so much addiction.
Exactly. Then I came out, and this is the insanity. If you thought that was insanity, going across the road, pissed out your head, blah, 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 blah. The insanity is, I want to say months, it's probably days, I was drinking and driving again.
Good God.
That is the insanity of the illness of addiction for me. Repeating. And I went in for 6 years until I finally got my bottom, after Chelmsford Prison. And because everyone was justifying it, they were saying things like, because I'm the external world, I know today you've got to fix the inside, not the outside. But the outside world was saying, you went up before Christmas. The judge had it in for you. He supported Man United. You know what I mean? I've got all these justifications. How can you be when you're Arsenal captain and winning league trophies? How can you have a problem? Coming out of the prison cell, I was straight back on the football pitch like nothing had happened. Absolutely, you do not put people in prison that have gone in there with an addiction illness into prison. Waste of time.
Yeah.
Absolutely waste of time. I should have been in rehab. I should have been doing community service, do what it want, other alternatives.
I think what's kind of so powerful and kind of terrifying is the illness of the addiction, that the depth of that denial, that nothing gets through. Because if you let it get through, then you get in touch with the pain underneath.
Oh, well, there you go.
And one of the kind of definitions that I've understood about addiction, it isn't what's the addiction, it's what's the pain and where's the pain.
100%.
And what's very important about what you're saying is that there's so much punishment and judgment and shame around the addict and not dealing with the addict. So I don't know you probably know the percentage of prisoners in jail with, particularly in women. I think only 10% of women's prisons.
They shouldn't be in prison. There's only 3,000 women in prison and 85,000 men, and
and those 3,000 women, 80% of them is addiction issues or something like that.
Well, I know it's in me. All those things that I spoke about earlier about that child. The illness it's not in the bottle. It's in me. it suppressed all those thoughts and feelings like football did. So that drug was just absolutely made for me. It's another thing that helped me suppress the pain, the emotional pain that I was bubbling around inside of me. I met my first wife in blackout. It's not a good start to a relationship, I can tell you that.
Doesn't predict happy endings.
Not really. And here you go. I put her into treatment because it's all her fault. What she did for me, she propped me up. Lisa, I'm not as bad as you. She started off with cocaine and went on to crack at the end. And it's like, I'll go out and have a drink. I was the one that was unfaithful. I was the one that was going to prison. I was the one that was weeing myself. I was the one having blackouts. But you're the addict.
You're the problem.
Get yourself in treatment right now. So she had to go. Football had to go for me to get to my bottom, because I used football to abstain from alcohol. So I need that to be removed. I needed the alcohol to stop working as well, which it did. And then right at the end of my drinking, I was left with me. I was left with that little boy going. There's a couple of times I get emotional. Once is the bottom and once is around my mum when I watched her die of bone cancer. Oh, you've got me this morning with James as well. James. I didn't think I was going to go.
Let's not do them all at once. Should we do one at a time? Tell us about that rock bottom and how you can still feel it in you now.
I've got a few days under my belt now. I'm a long way away from a drink. Yeah,
16th of August, 1996.
And I'm about gliding today, and about enjoying life, and I've got a fantastic life today, and I've got a peaceful head, loving heart, and I'm comfortable in my own skin. My rock bottom. So it's. I've given you a little bit. I put my wife into treatment in 96, 90 in the January. In the February, I do my knee, my cartilage. I had my cartilage removed, so I couldn't get on the football pitch. So football had to go. You've got it. The kids get taken away by my mother-in-law. I pass out one Sunday afternoon. She takes the kids away. Then I'm trying to make it for the England's a big tournament, the Euros in 96, big tournament in this country. And I remember meeting Terry Venables, the manager, in Scott's restaurant for lunch, and he made me the captain. And I could hardly play because of my knee and stuff. He didn't realise that I went on a 3-day bender after the lunch. I might have been a little bit, but anyway, so I had injection after injection.
So you were a
through the
binger,
tournament.
weren't you?
Not in the holidays or if I was injured. So
Right.
It was only because work made me into a binge drinker, really,
Okay.
because at the end of my drinking, it was every chance that I could get, because the EBGBs were coming up and they wouldn't be silenced. And so the April, like I say, I crossed the line in my language. And I realised I was chalking it off the wall because I realised for the first time in 11.5 years of drinking that I couldn't stay sober. I couldn't stop. And I'd crossed the line. And it scared me to death. I had a little bit more research to do with the Euros. I went into the Euros and I just dry drunked it through the tournament, white knuckle it. I was like, I'm not going to drink. I'll play football. But as soon as Gareth missed the penalty, I was in the dressing room and the guy, he just passed away actually as well, who used to be giving you tapes and your shin pads before the match and stuff. It's a bar, would you believe, a bar after the match back in the day.
Wow.
And he gave me the I won't mention the brand, but he gave me alcohol and I drank it, and I was away on a 44-day bender.
Good
So
God.
that's a bit of a binge, wasn't it?
That's a long
And I did
binge.
everything in that 44 days that I'd previously done and sex had gone. I'd used sex in the past to change the way that I feel, and that stopped working as well. My last drink was a pint of Guinness with brandy. If I took brandy, I used to sick it straight up because I couldn't keep it down. So I used to put it in the Guinness to keep it down. So 4 pints of that an hour in my last drinkings and not touching the sides. And then I could drink one and absolutely pass out. It was no guarantee what you're going to get.
Your whole body
really.
was just completely
You're not going to...
broken.
You've got it. So I'm sitting there and 29 and I've got the pint of Guinness with the brandy in, and the governor Bill came over and he said, "You all right, Tone?" and I'm floods of tears.
Yeah.
I've just broken. Just kind of broken. It's just all flowing down, and I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not." But I can't articulate that
feeling
power,
of despair.
That power within me. I believe, and it's happened that way, that the compulsion to drink completely left me at that moment. I'm very lucky. I got a little bit of a. Some people call it a spiritual experience. I don't know what it was. It was just, for me, I was sick and tired. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to die. I was stuck in limbo. I had a pain in my heart, and right and deep inside of me, I said, help. I said, help.
Yeah.
Not had a drink to this day.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And it lives on in you, that moment of
well,
recognizing that
it's as powerful today as it's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank God you got the help in the form of AA.
Yeah,
and
that
in
was
the form
start.
of James
W. But because I'd originally seen him in the April, when my mother-in-law, when she took the kids off of me, she said, "There's this number of this guy. You know, he used to be a drug dealer back in the day. Does a bit of suits for the craze and stuff, and he's about 10 years without drinking a drug, and he's gone a bit weird now. But you know, it seems like he might be able to help you." And I went to see him. Of course, I hadn't had that moment. I had still a little bit of research to do with the Euros. And I looked at him and I said, I better come and see you Thursday. And then I got drunk at the weekend, and I'm like,
you missed it.
I asked him to move in with me, actually. I said, can you kind of babysit me? Because I can't do this. I can't stay sober. And but the great thing is when I got my bottom and then I went back into work. So that was the Friday the 16th. We were playing West Ham. I wasn't, because I hadn't reported back for training that summer. Because I was injured as well. I had a reoccurrence of my knee. The physio had another operation. I had a couple of bottles of Chablis when I came home from the operation. And I'd gone walkabouts, really, for the 44 days. And the physio, Gary Lewin, was trying to track me down and where are you? And I went into the training on the Monday. So after the first game of the season against West Ham. I think it was on the Monday. See, it's good that I can piece it together because we've got fixture lists to pass.
Otherwise,
I wouldn't have known what day. Cause I'm in fog.
Christmas and Easter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's in fog. But it was the Monday, and I went in there, and just when I was ready, just when I was broken, there was a colleague in that car park, and I'd avoided him because I didn't like well people.
No, they're a bit creepy.
Yeah, and they got the light and stuff, and they're like, my God, I want people sick that are worse than me. Surround yourself with sick people and get drunk and die. But,
and look down on the healthy people.
Exactly.
Like
so I turned away from him and I made fun of him. He's weak.
Yeah,
he's a weak character. He's not like me. I can kill myself properly. He's weak. He's asked for help. You know what I mean? Like, just when I was broken, just when I was ready, I had that spiritual experience and that letting go and that moment of clarity. And I walked into that car park and I think I've got a drinking problem. I didn't know what alcoholism was, didn't know what addiction was, didn't know what anything was.
No,
didn't know what pain was.
Language,
no language whatsoever. And he said, come on, let's go to a meeting. And my journey began, yes. Good stuff, huh?
That is good stuff.
I'm so blessed to have had that moment. I've seen so many people down the years not have that spiritual experience. And in my experience, and got to be careful here about opinions and stuff, but my experience, the ones that have had that moment, pretty much never drink again. If you can hold on to that moment.
I would add into that, and obviously you know better because this is you.
I don't know a thing, mate. I don't know a
is
thing.
That it's the relationship you formed with AA and the trust with that, and the relationship you formed with James W. That enabled you to have a relationship with yourself that was one of a loving relationship, because it taught you 100%. How to be with the pain and the distress.
Exactly that. So the work was done with the rock bottom, but you're very well added. Very well added.
Thank you.
The journey's just...
Mr. Adams.
Because it just starts then, as you well know.
It's a long haul.
Absolutely. Then it begins, because there was a reason why I played football, and there's a reason why I drank, and there's a reason why I took this and took that and tried to avoid the way that I felt. It's because of me. So I'm back to square one here, you know. I'm 29 going on 5. So there we go. So come on, James. Now he can be of real service. Not the drinking one that I went to see. When I went to see him now, clean and sober, without drink, drugs, and I don't bet either. I know you can swap your addictions and stuff, and I've had a few powerful examples in my history that tell me that I don't want to pick that one up either. And I don't do the lottery. It's like a shandy
Gambling.
for me, you know what I mean? And I can give you the stats of the silent illness at the moment. 50% of all suicides today are gambling debt related. So it's a real problem in society at the moment. So
that's terrible.
Yeah, we need to get to grips with it. Anyway, that's a digression.
But about James W., tell me, for people listening, the quality of him as a therapist. What was it about? Okay, he had no bullshit. And there was something about the tough white guy background that he, you know, if you'd come to see me, a posh white woman, you probably wouldn't have felt so easy.
Might not work, might have done, I don't know.
But someone who had a similar background, who had been a dealer. But what was it about him as a person that
he didn't say anything? Do you know what I mean? He just sat there and didn't judge. Let me find out my own. He always said, he's an existential therapist as well.
Yeah.
He always said, you have to become your own therapist.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. I'm not going to say that's right, that's wrong. Do that. You know, just by me opening my mouth, because I couldn't open my mouth for 29 years.
Yeah.
I actually, Julia, I can't shut up now, so we might have to. But it's been my saviour, because first time in my life I used to go in there to see James every single Monday for the last 28 years and drop me load. Put it a different way, probably.
And
share my
clean.
experiences. There we go. And talk to them about my pain and about my angst and about my relationships and my moths, and also the 12-step program. You know, it's very, very powerful. It changed me. The 12-step program, and James West, he took me through the steps as well. We had meetings in the first 2 years. He said, I'm not your therapist, I'm your sponsor. You're going to do step 1 for me now. This is the book. I need you to write this, and this. And powerlessness, do step 1. And then we went back and we did some therapy stuff. And then when I was done, he said, right, okay, we'll have a session on sponsorship. And then I did step 2, 3, 4.
But the structure of that is a bit like training for football now. So that would have worked for you.
Perfect. And he slowed me down, because I think I realised that it was forever. You know what I mean? I didn't get this one day at the time stuff. I knew I'd done that. It's not an option. You know, it's not an option for me. So I need some tools. Now I've got all this pain in my life and all this angst and this little boy who's 5. I need some tools now, and I need them quick. So the steps changed me. I've got issues with my mother, and I've got issues with my father, and you need to clear up all this stuff and all my learnt behaviour and all my DNA that's telling me to go out and get drunk. And through steps 4 and 5 is a fearless and moral inventory. Right. So a part of that, step 5 is sharing it, and I shared it with James. But at that stage, and I'm 2 years down the road, I completely trust him. You know, he didn't know who Arsenal was. He didn't know it was
he was not
football.
Interested in football.
No, which kind of works as well, you know.
He wasn't impressed by you.
I don't think he'd give a shit. No,
no. That helps. Really. With the humility bit, that helps.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I love you, James, and I told him that.
Oh.
But it is all about me. It's my one opportunity to kind of talk about me, you know, in a safe space. And because I shared step 5 with him about all this angst, all my dark thoughts and my feelings that any human being has, and I need to share them in it, and then I don't act on them by opening my mouth and talking about them. I get perspective, and I don't have to act on all this mad thoughts. Yeah, my mate, Judge Tony, always used to say, I know I'm going to have a bad day when I get a good idea. And he gets a million of good ideas
a day.
and I do as well. So I just have to park them in therapy and say, oh, actually, that one's quite a good one. I might hold on to that one, and use it and might come in. But actually, a lot of
the compulsion thing.
Yeah, the compulsion to think.
Well, the compulsion, any kind of low impulse control, when you have a compulsion to start something, to grow something, is a step away from being in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
And the addiction, as I read your book, Addicted, very good book.
Well, that's
very
my step
brave
4
book.
and 5 in paperback. So
Right.
it wasn't powerful enough to do it with James, because a lot of my stuff was in the public domain. So I need to clear up it in the public domain as well. And so I could walk down the street and they say you're only sick as your secrets, and I put it all out there and went, there you go, all done.
You must have
so I
helped a
can
lot
walk
of
down
people.
the road now from Lancaster Gate Station and kind of go,
nothing.
I'm
not
at peace
hiding.
now.
Nothing to hide.
I don't owe anybody money. I've not turned anyone out. I'm not a thief. I'm not a cheat. I don't have to creep. I've not done anything. I'm polite to people. I'm kind. You know, this is not me. But the bad Tony, in effect, gets into therapy. James West has had him for the last 28 years. He's had the dark stuff, so I can live in peace. Go in peace. Yeah.
God bless James West.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because what developed, wasn't it, with the addiction is you start doing something to stop the pain, and then the thing that you're doing to stop the pain is the thing that causes the pain. That's the horrible pattern. And what James West and AA, which I think is still the most powerful, best life-saving organisation in the world that gets very little credit. It saves the NHS,
the Cochrane
it saves
report,
families.
If I can just draw your attention to the Cochrane report in 2020, it's in black and white now, it's evidence-based, fellowship groups, 12-step programme is the best solution.
Do you think you could say it a bit louder?
And it's free. There you go.
Free.
Get yourself to a meeting.
It fucking works, right?
Yeah.
Just to finish with James, what do you want him to know?
I'm clean. I'm clean with him, I'm not the only person he's saved. He was 20 years at Sporting Chance. I started Sporting Chance a couple of years into recovery when a lot of other colleagues, athletes, footballers, were coming to me going, help. And there was no provisions in the game at that point. So off I go and start a charity. And now they're, of course, the biggest in the world in sports addiction and mental health issues, yes.
Good for
you. But the
you.
best. There you go. More importantly, 20 contracts, cricket, everything. And Colin Bland and the trustees are doing a great job. I stepped back 4 years ago. They made me honorary president. I don't know how I feel about that, but thank you. James started that right at the beginning. I made James available to other people. And they do about 50 people a year in residential, the 26-day model. Down in Hampshire, down in Liphook. I think they got about 1,000 calls of mental health issues. And of course, they completely cleared up, which I'm very proud of them. When Prince William came to me, when we had as president of the FA, came to me with the historic sex abuse cases in football, and 872 footballers came forward, and we put 872 into one-on-one therapy. So very, very proud of that.
Big thing.
And cleaned up that. And, the Greg Clark at the time and Prince William, they started heads together, and we all kind of went, oh, hold on a minute, you want to put mental health on the agenda, okay, but have you got the resources to back it up? But we did have the resources at Sporting Chance. We did have the resources. PFA have been an amazing backer down the years, and then the FA puts money in, and now we've got the cricket, the PCT, the PCA, darts,
all sports.
four world tours, ATP tour, tennis. Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing charity. And James W, was clinical director there for 20 years. And I just literally at the start just went, you stay in that hotel where the team used to be in Sopwell House. I said, you there, I'll send you people that ring me. I said, go and see him. Because I can't do this stuff. Small. I've realised that as well. I like the talking bit. I can't do the listening bit. I'm useless. I don't want to know about your problems, mate. I'm busy sorting out my own.
Yeah.
I can't
There's
do
only
that.
so much room.
So when the wife comes back, she makes me laugh when she probably comes in, and I come back from a therapy session with James. She said, well, how was James? I said, I ain't got a clue. I don't know.
Not that interested.
I always remember, and I think it's important to say, because it's not everyone's experience. And I went to China and I was doing a lot of doing. I had a bit of PTSD. I had a heart thing in Azerbaijan 2015, where my main artery was 99% blocked.
Wow.
And yeah, that close. Yeah,
Gosh.
3 cardiologists said you were minutes away. Luckily, God. I went to the hospital in Azerbaijan and put a couple of stents in. But that was so traumatic that a year after that date, I had a complete and utter mental I became a workaholic. Basically, the bank balance was going through the roof. Once again, my mental health was going through the floor. And I was in China doing emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. Obsessed, work. And I had 19 years of recovery going, what
the hell
are you doing? So I rang the wife and she said, we've got enough. She said, are you going to drink? I said, well, that's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
That's been removed. That's gone a long time ago. And then the next thing is there, you're going to kill yourself. You know what I mean? Because that's the reality.
That's a serious question.
Yeah, she said, and I said, well, no, I want to live. At 29, I didn't want to live.
Yeah.
And now at 49, I don't want to die. I've got such a great life, and it just rocked me. And I was uncontrollable tears running down my face. 49, classic midlife crisis, absolute classic. And I don't run off with my secretary anymore. I don't buy fast cars. I don't do that. I do the suits now and again, but I don't act out anymore. And I just cried and realised that I was getting old. And
you felt vulnerable.
Literally, the taste had gone. My taste had gone. Showers, like a hot shower. Didn't touch the sides, couldn't feel it. And I sat in that chair in that hotel room, so lonely. And she said, get on the plane, come up. And I resigned, and it's the last job that I've done in 2018. So I retired then.
There's a direct line, isn't there, between wanting to die and then having a kind of mortality wake-up call later, knowing that you want to live, which both shows how you've grown and you've changed, but also that often it takes nearly dying to fully let ourselves recognise how much we want life and value life, that we can just take it for granted, assuming tomorrow I'm going to live, next day I'm going to live, I can plan 10 years ahead.
I think it's the ultimate fear. The fear of dying is the ultimate. They talk about in IA the millions and millions of fears out there flying, you name it.
Relationships, intimacy, sex, whatever
everything.
It is. Yeah.
All deep rooted. When I did my step 4, it was all pointing across to fear. And I did it on the columns and a big book way, and I did it Hazelden way. Because you've got to do it more than one way.
Yeah.
You can't just do it one way.
You're an addict, right? You have to do it every which way.
Absolutely. It's got to fix me. And lucky enough, it kind of did. It kind of fixed me, and I went across, but it all came back down to the fear of dying. My fear of flying, and I went early on in my recovery, like white knuckling it on the planes and going, complete control freak. I would be better off. Let me fly. Let me do it. You know what I mean? It's like, just let it go. And that journey from head to heart, it's been really painful, but it's been so valuable. So I see it's a strength today to be vulnerable, to come here and share my stuff. I float down the road after this. Absolutely float,
But also there's immense courage in when you were so open about your addiction was at a time where nobody was open about addiction or their mental health. That you were one of the real kind of pioneers of using your own pain and your own story to help and success the lack of shame, and so that people would get help for themselves and it wouldn't continue. And then, let me finish. You so want to interrupt me. I don't know why.
All the time.
This is lauding you. This is giving you praise. And there's something about you can't bear it. I don't know what that is.
I just want to talk all the time.
But then it led, in the end, to Sporting Chance. It led to Six Mental Health, is it called?
Yeah.
Six Mental Health Solutions.
Mm.
So there's something about you that when you connect with your true self wants to speak, but your true self also really wants to change the lives of other people who are suffering.
Well, the 12th step is about passing it on, and I've got to give it away to keep it. And that's been my experience also. And we pass it on in different ways. James has got the magic. It's no point, and I'm not, hopefully the humility in me is enough that actually he's saved hundreds of people. I'm not the only one that's grieving today. Yeah. But you can pass it on in different ways. And it seemed like my journey, my path, my calling, I hate to use those kind of words, I'm cringing as I do this, was book, Addicted. Sold 400,000 copies in the first year.
It's a lot more than me,
Second to Dickie Bird. Second to Dickie Bird.
Yeah, well.
I know, it's painful.
But that 250,000 you put into Sporting Chance.
I did, yeah. I got $250,000. So in the days when people bought books and you got money for writing.
Yes,
it's a different world now. But and my second book, Sober, in 2017, sold about £2, about £2.50, which I also give away. But
well, the drama of Addicted is more exciting than the reality
says a
of
lot
Sober.
about our society. Yeah.
If you see what's on telly, what people watch is all about trauma. It's
Rivals, mate, Jilly Cooper, go girl.
But also it's about dysfunction. Things that are kind of about proper relationships and regulating and being healthy do not sell and do not do very well.
I always say, Sober, my second book, I love it. It's so grown up. It's how I am today. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. I repeat, don't get me wrong, I repeat the first chapter. Same chapter first in Addicted is in Sober. The first chapter says, that's my chair. Yeah. That's my chair. The rest of it is very different. And I've had a lot of people say there's too much football in it. As I said, I've skipped over this. Put a bit more Strictly in it, for God's sake.
Strictly was amazing. I love watching your YouTube on Strictly.
That book has sobered up more people than I ever have. I've had a real issue with sponsees in the fellowship. Not a real issue, but it don't seem that that's my place. No. Although I'm still open. When they ask you who wants to be a sponsor in the room, I put my hand up and I'm available for sponsoring. So James West did tell me that, do that, and because don't want to sponsor it. What am I sponsoring it?
You have to listen.
Oh my God, gee. Okay, stick me hand
Reluctant
up.
sponsor.
Do it, yeah. No one knows about it as well. I want to tell the world this is kind of fits for me beautifully.
It does.
No, so it's just my part, and I have to be honest with that and try to say, actually, and I don't do podcasts. I don't do this stuff.
I'm very touched
James
that you're here.
W said to me a little while ago, he said, Tone, you're patron of 6 charities. You're president of another one. You're doing all this work for Sporting Chance. In 2017, I was doing education for them. I'm going into prisons, 12 prisons a year. I'm going into sports clubs. I'm going into cricket clubs. All this for nothing. If you do something for nothing, you're worth nothing. He said, where's the balance in your life? We strive for balance today. You've got no balance. I came to the conclusion I need to slow down. I need to back up, back off, and shut up a little bit. Sorry.
A bit more being.
Not yet.
A bit more being and a bit less doing.
A little bit more, yeah. So I told a few of the charities they can use my name only. They're not going to get my services, and just take a little bit of Tony time,
And be a dad to your 5 kids, your grandchild.
They're all grown now. They're all done now. They all
Children
like
are never
me.
done in my experience.
No, they're not. Big children, big problems. Little children, little problems.
That is true.
And they're getting big now. So one's 40
and they're not
one's
addicts.
30. And Ollie's he won't mind me saying this. He's quite open with it. He's about 18 months now, clean and sober. Bang. So the ripple effect's really there. Yeah, thank God. I got him a sponsor, and I said, there you go. I don't want to go to the meetings that you go to. Go and work your own journey. Much admiration for him. He's very courageous with anyone, especially with
a famous dad.
Well, not famous, but kind of a recovering addict, kind of
legend.
Shut up.
You are, though. You are. So we're coming to the end, although I think we could talk for a long time. So it feels like you're going into a new phase in your relationship with yourself, where you have to find a way of still going to meetings, staying sober, more being, less doing, but also grieving again. Grieving James W.
Everything's grief, isn't it? You're the expert on that one, so I hear as well. Look, let me do a little bit of legend over here. I think you're the best in the business at it. I really do. I think the grief work you do is incredible. There you go. Can you handle that?
I'll take that.
No, you are.
I practically kicked you, actually, because I had to stop. I had to hold on to my leg.
No, it is, and it's all about grieving. Everything that I've let go of has got claw marks in. Absolutely everything, with my mother and father, and he went quite quickly of lung cancer, all in sobriety.
She died painfully of bone
cancer. Yeah, that was 9 months of that, and she was a good woman. She didn't deserve that, good woman, and well, my dad was a good man and stuff, but, it's just to go that way. You get a chance to grieve and to say goodbye, like I have done with James. He went into the hospice at Clapham for a little while, even though it was relatively quick. It's been about 6-7 months, and he had lung cancer as well. You get time, but that's actually physical people that have gone. But I'm talking about my little, we call them character defects. I don't know about the words that we use, but these things that I used to go to that don't serve me anymore, the running away aspect of this stuff, and being honest. And I'm not a doormat, but then again, the ego, you've got to check yourself all the time. So all these little underlying issues that I've escaped from in the past that I have to face today is what's the real change. It's the real grief. I don't have drinking dreams anymore, but I have football dreams.
Do you?
I still think that I can do it. It's from 5 years of age. Football's ingrained right into the very depths of my being, and I'm still there. And I had the one when I'm scared and in fear of, I ain't got my boots on in time and the game's kicked off, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I ain't got the captain yet. I'm like, Jesus, and I wake up in a hot flush of the
yes.
oh my God.
That would
I used
be
to have
bad.
things about, being drunk, and waking up and kind of going,
seen.
am I no, I'm all right, no, drink. I'm sober. But the football ones still happen. That I'm the big boss again, and I'm the captain, and I'm lifting another trophy, and yeah.
So is that
leading my country out, England in the Euros '96, and winning
that's
all
such
those
a huge
trophies.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The jumping off point of being the leader, being the captain, winning. You won all of those cups over 3 decades, which is a kind of record, and that stays in you. And I guess it stays in all sports people. You have to retire early. So is that the thing that part of you is still grieving now?
I think
it's
does.
sort of unconscious. It's in your dreams. It's not day to day.
There's a part of me that likes not doing it anymore as well. You know, we're complex human beings.
Yes,
aren't
there's
we, at
two
the end
things
of the
can
day?
be true.
And I still need my one-to-one therapy, you know, to part my stuff, because I go, you know, the inferiority, superiority. I'm better than worse than. I've been right-sized in the room. I know I'm no better, no worse than any human being. Just doing my best here, you know, doing the next right thing, the next loving thing. And when you've got that philosophy, Bill W. who said that, one of the founders of AA, he said when he was kind of over it, and I quite like it, and I kind of live by it, but he says, ambition, what do you think ambition is? It's different for him today. He said it's to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. Simple as that. Keep it simple. These complex human beings, to be able to keep it simple, I have to do a hell of a lot of work on myself, because I'm better than you and I'm worse than you.
It's the extremes.
You know, so all that extremes, all that stuff, I have to let it go, put it in, all that baggage, everything, grieve it all, because there's a part of it that loved it, did it for a long time. That part of it doesn't serve me today, you know, and then I can pass it on to all my children, you know. My youngest is 14, and we're talking to each other.
You're listening.
And I'm listening. And it's not all about me. Yeah. And my boys are growing up and coming into the world, and Ollie's got recovery, and my 30-year-old, I'm going to have lunch to her today, and my 40-year-old is amazing. I've got a couple of grandkids that are amazing, and they call me Super Grandpa. You know, who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought?
I would have been dead at 29.
That is a wonderful place to stop, Tony Adams.
Thank you.
Super Grandpa. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julia.
Hello, Sophie and Emily. Now we're going to talk about Tony Adams.
I had such a sort of bodily resonance when I was thinking about little Tony. Like I really felt for little Tony being laughed at in the classroom and all alone with like his thoughts and his feelings, and nobody helping him kind of make sense of what it all was. And sort of wishing that we could sort of go back in time and give him a really different experience. Also sort of related, not to the like running to football bit, unsurprisingly, but to that sort of that sense of fear that you can really feel so bodily as a child, that is almost, you know, like it's just can sort of be in you. And I really resonated with that. And it made me think of sort of, I guess, in a way, all of us as adults have a version of that, right? Like we all have the little one of us inside us that almost definitely didn't get every single thing that they needed and struggled in various ways. And something sort of that I've done in my own therapy, and it sounds so sort of wishy-washy, like when you watch therapists in films and you're like, but actually I have found to be a very powerful thing is even just like bringing a photo of the younger version of you into therapy, or just in your own lives, writing, like having that there and writing the sort of little version of you a letter. And I think that there can be something that's quite healing about grown up you thinking about the needs of little you and sort of taking care.
I think also one of the powers sometimes there's lots of powerful things about that, isn't there? But one of them is also sometimes you give yourself permission to speak from your place as a child, that sometimes your sort of adult self senses, you know, like when you can let yourself tune into that part of you or that voice or however that fits for you, you allow yourself to kind of hear your own fear, what that little boy or little girl said, that our kind of often our adult brain doesn't allow us to own that we feel, because it feels like that's childlike or that's silly, or actually you were loved and you have no right to feel that feeling. And then sometimes when we kind of create that sort of conversation within us, then we can allow our different sort of parts, as it were, to have different voices, rather than having, you know, if you go to internal family and systems therapy, they talk about that one, you know, we sort of develop these protectors, and Dick Schwartz says we have the managers and the sort of ones who interfere when there's crisis. and that the managers in particular are the ones who like to keep everything under control. You know, all those other little parts that are sort of milling around inside us with different voices.
I've got a very effective manager.
Yes, a lot of us do.
Yeah. And then the firefighters. I mean, Tony probably had a firefighter.
A firefighter is often what he describes of as sort of doing impulsively, or after you've done that behavior, you look back and you think, who was that? Who did that thing? That's not me. And that's sort of like it's one of the cues to think, oh, that's probably when my firefighter took over. And you know, if you think about the sort of I guess the sort of chaos that comes with addiction, people often experience that as a part outside of themselves, that, you know,
that they exile,
that then sort of takes over and runs the show. I thought it was such a vivid portrait, a very generous portrait from Tony about just how far it can take you, how much addiction will make you lose your children, your freedom, going to prison, your work, all your relationships, that he was sort of lucky enough to survive that process in order to get to the point he was able to say, no, I don't want to do that. And it's really powerful, I think, to hear a story of repair, that for people out there who feel like maybe, you know, I've certainly heard often in my therapy room, I feel like I'm broken, you know, that there is no, I'm never can be okay.
There's nowhere back.
And I thought it was a lovely sort of portrait to have someone can both be repaired, but also still complex, you know. 20 years later, he could still have an episode of workaholism and still have difficult times, and yet also live a very full and meaningful life where there really was love and he wanted to live again.
Yeah. And I think, yes, that he spoke, that there was something about the way that he spoke was also, I suppose, links to a lot of the 12-step stuff, which is about accountability, of sort of saying, you know, I did these things and I'm responsible for them, but not in a way that was to do with shame, in a way that sort of held the, you know, the other parts of him, the little Tony, all the sort of other things. So I think it's a beautiful example of how to be accountable without, you know, stabbing yourself. I think it is a really difficult thing to do.
Negotiation.
Like how do you manage that? It kind of informs a lot of the different sort of narratives around addiction. There's like the sort of one narrative which is around like it's a disease, people can't help it. There's lots of sort of different discourses, isn't there? And I think that, like you said, Mum, the most helpful one for me is partly, I think it's Gabor Mate who talks about the root of addiction being pain, and that addiction is the forlorn attempt to solve the problem of human pain, which is a very lovely way of, lovely way of putting it. But also, we think of addicts and we think of substances, but actually there's all sorts of things that we can be addicted to. And there is a thing called the addiction tree, which sort of shows that, and at the bottom in the sort of soil, the root is kind of underlying damage, shame, all the things that the forlorn attempt bit. And then in the tree, there's different sort of categories. So there's like activity addiction. So that's like gambling, that sort of thing, exercise. There's substance addictions, which is alcohol, drugs, etc., etc. There's people addiction. So people who are addicted, like I need to be in relation. I need like love, sex, codependency. And then there's thought addictions. So perfectionism, those
OCD.
kinds of ones, working, worrying, fantasy, OCD. And then there's feeling addictions, where like I have to have this feeling and I will formulate my life in order for that to happen. And I think sometimes just broadening the definition of addiction that can take away some of the stigma.
I love that.
I haven't heard that before, and it makes me think I'm an addict in every bloody frame. I mean, I think,
but I think that's sort of the point of it. It's
like,
sort
what
of the
the
point
fuck?
of it. And like, but I think sort of probably not that every person is an addict, but that there
we
is
have
like
tendencies.
there's a spectrum, isn't there? Yeah, or that there's like a spectrum of stuff that we do to survive, to keep ourselves going, and we're somewhere on the spectrum, and where we are on the spectrum makes a big difference to how the rest of our life looks, and we don't stay in the same spot on the spectrum. That at some point, if it's sort of taking over your life and you're losing out on things, then obviously, but if you're like you, Mum, and you have, like me, have habits and traits and things that facilitate you,
keep me
but
on the straight and narrow.
Right, but they're not to the detriment.
Yes, mainly
of the other parts of your life.
Yes, and I guess that we all use things to manage pain.
Exactly.
Everybody does. Everyone needs. And actually, one of the difficult things is that a lot of those strategies work. As Tony said, until alcohol stopped working, it did exactly what I wanted it to do, which was to obliterate all the pain. People are not stupid. They're not doing it for no reason. It's because initially, at least, it works. And the problem is that it often takes on a life of its own, or it ends up dominating to the cost of everything else. But most of us, as you say, it's like we live with how we use things most of the time, and mostly we can accommodate that alongside also giving space to feel pain so that we're not having to block it all the time. It's a question of, what you said, just repeating what you said, a gradation.
Yeah, I like that. I always learn so much from you two. And so if you got the Dick Schwartz thing from the Masters Conference we went together, and I was thinking, I know she remembers that so much better than me. It's quite annoying.
You've also just been to a lot more trainings than me. They probably all merge a bit more.
I also wanted to speak to, because obviously a big part of your conversation was about his therapist, James West, who just died. So that felt very kind of raw, and sort of appreciated Tony kind of bringing that into the room of what was sort of going on for him. And it kind of made me think, gosh, it's such an incredible example of like the power of a therapist to hold things in your life, like James did for Tony. I think he sort of said at some point that like James held the dark stuff that freed Tony up to be able to kind of have more space and live in the light.
The light.
It was very moving. And we talk a lot about here about being in therapy, being a therapist, a very sort of very real example of how that can be so transformative.
And like all relationships, I mean, I was in a dilemma all through that conversation as how much to go with James and kind of really let Tony grieve, and then that was poking and prodding too much. And so I kind of just did neither, really. I think I just went.
Because you're not James. You're not his therapist.
I'm not his therapist. Exactly.
And it's not therapy.
I know, but there's always the therapist there kind of going, shall I? Shan't I? Shall I ask this? It's therapeutic, I hope. But how we can internalize our therapist, and that like we can go to object relations theory. And I really felt like he had such a wonderful internal relationship with James that he'd really secured that within himself, and that's what
like he could imagine. Oh, like what would James say?
Yeah,
like how
exactly.
Which brings me to that complicated confusion I think we have very much in our kind of individualistic culture between authentic self-worth and self-esteem, and then sort of success and ego and power that you kind of touched on, like how it can be very if you didn't grow up with having an internal sense of self-worth and lovableness in the way that Tony didn't, that he did then learn to have with James, then those things become very sort of both addictive but also confusing. Like, I should be feeling good about myself, I'm being successful, people react to me like I'm brilliant and great, you know, the way they reacted to him coming out of prison, of like, oh, you never should, the kind of the misalignment between your own sense of self and how the world seems to be responding to you. All the things that we're told make us worthy in our culture, that if you're successful, if you're beautiful, if you're married and have children, if you X or if you Y, then you are worthy, which are these kind of, I guess what in person-centered would say is external locuses of valuation, external places of worth. And actually, although of course we're always affected by how people think and feel about us, that internal part is sort of essential to actually letting yourself love yourself and be loved. isn't it? And that's kind of part of what he had to learn, was actually the internal version. It doesn't really work to pursue the external version, certainly not alone.
Or not all the time. Might sometimes work.
Yeah, I must. Yeah,
I remember when I was younger, I used to watch this show on Nickelodeon called Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And
I love that. Yeah, I remember that.
In Sabrina the Teenage Witch, she had this cupboard that she would open, and instead of having clothes, it was just people cheering and clapping. If she was feeling a little bit down, she would just open the cupboard and everyone would go, yay! And I guess, sometimes we can get a bit from the outside, but sometimes, we need our own internal cupboard, our own internal cheerleader cupboard.
Yeah. And then sometimes we need to ask other people to cheer us on. For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so for now, and thank you so much, Tony. I mean, I was really honoured that you came, because he doesn't give many podcast interviews, so I was very touched, and also want to thank Poppy, his wife, who facilitated it. Thank you, Tony.